Liz Hamlet and I'm the host of How to Spark Success Show. This is where I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners and we get to steal some of their success secrets. So I'm absolutely delighted to have the amazing Janine Garner here joining me today. Hi Janine, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. How exciting.
Yeah, and you're joining me from Melbourne, is that right?
No, Sydney. I'm in Sydney.
You're in Melbourne. I've been talking all about Melbourne. So I love both. I must admit, I do prefer Sydney. We had a great time there when we visited that on our honeymoon, so that's good.
We do live in a beautiful part of the world. I actually live near Manly. So as you can see, the photo in the background, we're a bit of a surfing family. And yeah, every weekend we're down at the beach.
There's one bay, a tiny little bay with a really nice little cafe on, is it Cabbage Tree Bay?
Yeah, that's our weekly walk around to there.
Yeah. You have to mind out the sea though, you can get splashed a bit on the walk. Brilliant. So Janine, I'll just do a bit of an intro and then I'll get you to tell us a bit about yourself and about your new book. That's out on the 1st of July. So Janine, you are a networking and leadership expert. You're also a keynote speaker and you talk all about the power of connection and what it takes to bring out brilliance in teams. And your new book, which is on pre-release now and has some amazing bonuses until the end of June, is called Be Brilliant, How to Live a Life of Influence. So do you want to tell us a bit about your career journey and about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if any of your listeners can tell, I'm not a true blue Aussie. I'm actually from the UK originally. So I was born in the north of England, in Leeds, just outside of Leeds, a little place called Guiseley. My dad was a farmer, and pretty much I grew up with a dad that worked very hard, massively working class family. And really, I often say the words of wisdom my dad would feed to me where there's muck, there's brass, love, it'll be right. And that was pretty much how I grew up. Also, a massively, very sort of gender specific role style of upbringing. You know, the boys were allowed to play army and outside, and mum and grandmother and me were in the kitchen, and it was pretty standard like that. I always felt pretty out of place, to be honest. School was pretty ordinary. I was teased for having freckles and blonde, brown hair at the time, and definitely didn't have any boobs, and I was constantly teased for being a bit of a geek because I lost myself in books, and until I discovered hair dye, and then life changed. But at the age of 18, I left England, I left Leeds, sorry, and never actually went back. So I did the moving away for uni thing that we do in England. They don't tend to do it here in Australia. Packed the backpack and went to Birmingham. I studied at Aston University and did a Bachelor of Science degree. 4 years later, moved to London, and that's really where my career started. So actually, I was one of the lucky ones at the time that was able to get to uni because the government paid for me. So I'm giving away my age now, but at the time, the government would give grants and pay fees for kids that actually couldn't really afford to go there. And I was lucky enough to get one of those. But I spent I spent 4 years in Birmingham and then started building my career in London. Started life as a graduate trainee for a company called Coats Viella. They looked after the Jaeger brand and the Viella brand, and pretty much threw myself into the world of fashion in London, specializing in marketing. During that time, fell in love with an Aussie. I came to Australia pretty much on holiday and landed back in London, hit the M25 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in February. I went, I can't stay here anymore. It's depressing. And I decided to apply to move to Australia. So I arrived. I was successful in getting a permanent residency visa, and I left England literally with a backpack. So I gave up my job, I sold everything, and I arrived in Australia on the 1st of December 2000 and had to essentially rebuild my career in a country where I knew absolutely, I had no social proof, rebuild a network in a country where I knew no one, and obviously start building a life that I dreamed of here. And I think that's where I first started really understanding how important network was and how important developing really strong connections were in terms of building your success. And essentially over the next 8 years, I did that. I built a solid corporate career here. I ended up being a group marketing director of a company called Oraton, the Oraton Group. So I looked after the Ralph Lauren brand. It was a licensed brand for us, and the Oraton brand, which is a sort of leather luxury goods brand here in Australia. Built that over, you know, that career over the next 8-9 years. It's almost every 10 years I change what I'm doing. And at the same time, I had 3 children. I've still got them. They're just a bit older, but at the time they were little. And life was a little bit crazy. If I'm really honest with you, Liz, I'd got to where I wanted to get to corporately, and I looked around and went, is this it? Is this all there is? And life was busy because I had 3 children under 7. Both my husband and I were working full time, and it was crazy. You know, one would be sick and we'd be sat in bed trying to work out who had the least on that day, and negotiating who would take the day off, and God help us if the second child got sick and then the third child. It was just mental. And I was starting to feel like a little bit of a machine. I was feeling like a bit of a robot. And I started questioning what was next. There was this feeling of there's got to be more women out there, particularly who want to keep growing, who want to keep developing more. You know, I'd spent my entire corporate career climbing a ladder, striving for more, proving I was good enough, striving for more, proving I was good enough, whilst at the same time life was manic. And then I got there and it was like, this is actually not quite what I really anticipated. And so I started questioning, there's got to be more. There's got to be more women like me that have lost their fire in their belly and want more sparkle, in your words, that just have this desire to keep learning and to keep growing, that actually do believe you can have it all, just not all at once. And so I set up a lunch here in Sydney, and I reached out to 8 incredible businesswomen here, and that I didn't really know, and invited them for dinner. And it was just incredible, just this instant connection around people being at the same wavelength, the smarts. Like I felt like I was, as I said, a walking robot. I was doing stuff for work. I was delivering to my team, to my boss, to the shareholders, to Mr. Lauren in the US, to the media. Then I was coming home and delivering to my kids, my husband, the pets, and I was just forgetting about myself. And then suddenly I was in this dinner going, oh my God, there are incredible women out there doing awesome things. And I came away feeling really inspired, and everybody else felt the same. And so what I did is I did the numbers and decided that there was a business opportunity here. And I packed in my 6-figure salary paying corporate job and decided to start all over again, and bootstrapped my own business, which was a senior executive women's networking company called LBD Group, the Little Black Dress Group. And essentially over the next 8 years, I built that such that it had a platform around Australia, and we had women from, own businesses and corporate executives coming together essentially to connect, to collaborate, and to inspire each other to keep becoming better. Because I really do believe that when we work together, we can move faster, we have better ideas, and we feel supported in terms of our journey. And it was during that 8 years that I was starting to get asked to speak. I was starting to get asked to comment, particularly in the women's leadership space. And so I found myself doing that type of work, and that evolved then to me starting to write books. So my first book, From Me to We, came out, which was all about the power of collaboration. I then wrote It's Who You Know, which is all about the power of network and who are the key people you have around me. It's Who You Know became a global bestseller. It's continuing to sell around the world. It's been translated into, I think, 6 languages now. It's just insane. And through that whole journey, I also had this belief that we had the power to do so much more. And that's when I launched also a non-for-profit, where essentially it was about bringing people together that wanted to consolidate their philanthropic dollars, whether it was $25 up to $100, and how if we brought it together, how we could actually have so much more impact. And this idea of a gift-giving circle for us became supporting women and kids at the grassroots of Australia who essentially didn't have opportunity. And we did some incredible work. And it was through that work that my university, Aston University, had been, unbeknownst to me, they'd been watching what I was doing. And out of the blue, I got this letter from the Vice Chancellor that literally said, we would love to give you an honorary doctorate of science for the work that you've done. Liz, I bawled my eyes out. I was literally a mess. I can still remember one of my children walking and going, "What's wrong, Mum? Are you all right?" I'm going, "Oh my God, my work has been noticed." I was an absolute mess. And I think that has to be one of the highlights of my career, because I came back to the UK to receive that honorary doctorate, and I had to give the speech for the new graduates that were graduating that year. So it was like such an incredible moment. But sort of to fast track, I ended up selling LBD Group in March 2019. Because my other work was getting so much busier. So essentially what I guess now I'm an expert in the power of connection. Yeah. I'm seen as an expert around the world in that space. And really I'm passionate about it, because it is when we build powerful connections, we're able to do remarkable things. We're able to feel supported in terms of pursuing our dreams. We're able to unlock incredible ideas and innovations through collaborations, and ultimately that togetherness helps businesses make money. Yeah. Fundamentally. And so that is essentially what I do. I work very much, I speak around the world pre-COVID. I run many corporate training programs for organizations around the world, where it's really about how do we build high-performing teams that can lead through this and into the future, and really challenging what leadership is all about, really getting them to reconnect with who they want to be, to make sure they're surrounded with the right people doing the right work and leading in the right way as we sort of move our businesses through. I also work a lot in that scale-up space of businesses that have started but are wanting to scale up to the next level in terms of helping them navigate that next. And I do a lot. I've got my own mastermind group here in Australia where I work one-on-one with individual business owners to help them scale up. So I love what I do. It's very varied. If you'd have asked me as a 21-year-old what I wanted to be when I grew up, this would never, ever have been on my cards at all. It really is incredible when I look back and I go, wow. I mean, I gave up English at the age of, what would it be, 16, O-level, yeah. And I've written 3 books. That's mental. It's totally mental.
And coming on to books, do you want to tell us a bit, because I've obviously I know about Be Brilliant, and what I really like is sort of that focus on who and sort of being perfectly imperfect in business and in life. So do you want to talk us a bit about your new book?
Yeah, absolutely. So here it is, Be Brilliant. So essentially I started really starting to question what was the tipping point between those that were successful in life and in business and those that weren't. What was the point of difference? And I started interviewing people on my own podcast and doing a lot of research around this piece. And there was this one thing that kept coming out, and it was this ability to lead self, this ability to rise above imperfection, rise above personal limitations or perceived limitations, and almost go, I have got nothing to prove. I have got nothing more that I need to strive for. This is me. And if I bring me in, then actually incredible magic happens. And it didn't matter whether it was a business owner of a large organization, a CEO of a multinational, or a world-class athlete. There was this absolute key things that were coming out with everyone I spoke to. And then when I looked at what was going on in the world, you know, the reality is we're exhausted. You know, we're exhausted at the moment with all of the change and the challenges and the complexities at a macro level that we're all dealing with economically. It's insane. From a health perspective, we're all dealing with the pandemic and the impact of that. And then socially, there is so much challenge going on, whether it be gender, race, fake news, etc., etc. So there's all this stuff going on macro level. And then when you look at ourselves, we're all exhausted. We're exhausted with trying to keep up. We're exhausted with keeping on top of technology. We're exhausted with keeping up with changes in policy and procedures and company direction. And we ourselves are just struggling with actually being human amongst all this. This incredible fatigue and exhaustion is putting people in this place of, I talk about, we're almost at risk of becoming the Hubots, that's a new word there, the robots of humanity, of now, versus these incredible human beings that have the potential to change so much, because we're literally just existing versus being what it is that we want to become. And it is this lack of self-belief, this comparisonitis, this imposter syndrome, these voices in our head that feed our inner doubt, that stop us from stepping forward, that stop us from being brave enough to face fear in the face and to just move ahead and do it. And the impact of this, Liz, is it's affecting leadership, it's affecting how we manage teams, it's affecting the decisions that we're making, and it's affecting us as human beings in terms of how the impact we're making in our communities and in our families. And I just went, enough. I mean, the reality is the only thing that we can control in all of this chaos, in all of this ambiguity, in all of this complexity, the only thing we can control is ourselves in terms of who we are being, and who we want to become, is where I started this thinking. And then when I looked at the skills that we need for the future, you know, the skills that we're really needing right now are things like we need to be curious, to ask more questions. We need to be curious, to play on the edge, to explore other industries for answers. We've got to be able to connect dots of information with skills, with people, with ideas. We've got to make sense of all this stuff and almost throw it up in the air and put it back together again. So we need to be curious. We've got to connect more. We've got to trust our intuition. Like we've entered into a place right now that we've never ever existed before, and in this place there are no answers. We can only try, and we can only keep testing. And our intuition is so powerful in terms of how we make decisions with the information that we've got to move forward. So we've got to trust our intuition more, to trust the people, the information, the data to move forward. And most of all, we've got to inspire. We've got to inspire people to create this direction and this movement forward, to pave a way to the future, to create hope and to create a vision. And so I went, God, that's making me feel exhausted. Like I've got to be curious, I've got to connect, I've got to inspire, and I've got to trust my intuition. It's like, wow, how on earth can we do that? If we're struggling with doubting ourselves, if we're struggling with imposter syndrome, if we're struggling with comparisonitis, and I just went, enough, to be honest, Liz. I went, enough. We've got to stop acquiring stuff and still feeling unhappy. We've got to stop upskilling with the 7 easy steps to, or this course or that course, and still we're doubting ourselves. We've got to stop acquiring contacts and feeling lonely. And we've actually just got to go, you know what, you have all you need. If you can just slow down, if you can look inside, and if you can actually do the work to know that you have all you need to be more brilliant tomorrow than you are today, to be more sparkly tomorrow than you are today. And so that's where the book came from. And essentially the book talks to 4 laws of brilliance. It talks to the law of being you, which is where it all starts, of owning your spotlight, of understanding what makes you you, of owning your dreams, and of owning your expertise. And when you know that, when you can step into that in its entirety, you become, the contagion is incredible. You know, when you've got nothing, when you're not hiding anything, when you're just you, it becomes contagious. So that's law number 1. Law number 2 talks to how we need to then be able to bring our best of ourselves. How do we function at your best? And this is about being ready, about harnessing your energy. I see too many people that are dying from the inside. They're just walking robots, as I said, or zombies just going through the motion? And how can you be infectious, and how can you drive contagion in others? How can you be brilliant, bring out the brilliance in others if you're actually dying from the inside? So law number 2 is about, you've got to be ready to take on the world and do your work. Law number 3 then talks to how we cannot do this on our own, which is the stuff, this is how we met, how actually connecting with intent, of learning how to engage better, of how to collaborate better, of how to connect better, creates extraordinary results and opportunities. So law 3 is all about connecting with intent. And then finally, law 4 is where we finally start leading ourselves. And I talk about how we need to magnify our influence. How do you let the world know? How do you let your teams know? How do you let your potential clients know that you are there to support them? And so this law talks about leadership and how we need to start learning to lead above the line, and gives lots of tools and tips of doing that, how we manage the people around us. It talks about amplifying the people around us, and then most importantly, this continuous learning loop that we need to do, because at the end of the day, brilliance is a practice. You don't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to spend the next 21 days becoming brilliant. It doesn't work like that. It's this ability to keep testing, trialing, reflecting, doing again, and this commitment to become better tomorrow than you are today. And so that's what this book talks about. It talks about giving you lots of skills and tips of how to become better through those 4 laws. But then I also talk about the things to watch out for. So yeah, it's like having me in your front room for however long you choose to read this book to help you become better.
Amazing. And I think what really struck me is, like, in today, particularly when we've mentioned a bit earlier about sort of social media, but particularly, that constantly sort of striving to be better, to compare yourself to other people. What you see is not the true vision of people's lives. I mean, you often see sort of social media influencers doing the sort of, this is the picture I posted, this is actually the sort of outtake, which is quite interesting, the differences. I think, that's really important to recognize, that you've got everything you need inside of you. It's just sort of harnessing that, and not trying to be that superwoman, or Superman at some point. Just, hands up, that's enough. And I've got everything I need, and trusting in your own ability. So that's what really struck me about the book. So in your personal and sort of professional life, what do you think's been the biggest factor that has helped you be successful?
I think there's 2 things. One of the most important ones is the people I surround myself with. There are so many statistics and stories and case studies and leaders that talk about who it is that's around them that helps lift them. And I couldn't agree more. That's why I'm so passionate about connection. It is the people that have always seen more in me than I will see in myself. It's the people that are willing to teach me and stretch my thinking and develop my mastery, so that that expertise piece starts playing out. It's the people that keep me safe. We need to have a picker around us that understand that we are running a marathon here. We're not trying to sprint the race of our dreams. It's the marathon of our dreams. And the reality is, life isn't full of unicorns and rainbows. It's not all, champagne swilling, beautiful food eating days. There are moments where you don't want to get out of bed. There are moments when the shit hits the fan. There are moments where it is awful. And these people are the ones that pick you up with no judgment, with no drama, and just help you navigate through. And then the butt kickers, the people that make sure you get stuff done. So it's people that I've surrounded myself with, that have believed more in me than I've believed in myself, that have encouraged me and pushed me to do more. So it's that, number 1. And number 2, I think I've always had an insatiable curiosity to keep learning and to keep developing. So I am a lifelong learner, and there's no stopping me. It's like I just want to keep growing and developing and challenging and exploring, so that I can learn more, and then I can gift that on to others. And it is this hunger to just keep getting better that I think has driven me from that working class farming community to essentially be self-sufficient. As I went through uni to London, and then gradually moving south, further south to here, that's just kept me going. So the people I surround myself with, and just my insatiable desire to keep learning and keep growing.
Amazing. And we've already talked about today, before we started recording, about your productivity diary. But what would you say are sort of some of your success habits and sort of practices on a day or weekly?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think I just want to caveat this by saying, you know, we've all got to work out what works for us. So what works for me may not necessarily work for you, Liz, or even your listeners. And I think that is part of the thing. I do talk about this in the book, actually, success habits, and the need to try and work out what it is that works for you. So for me, I've got to make sure the start and the end of my day, I bookend my day really carefully. So the two non-negotiables are the time I go to bed and my quality of sleep, and exercise in the morning. If I don't get that, my day is buggered the next day. So the exercise for me is a bit like, it's the active meditation. It's me, yes, looking after myself physically, but it just takes me out of my head to actually look after myself and make sure I'm fit. Because how can I travel the world and stand on stage and do full day workshops if I'm not physically fit? So it's part of that. If I've got extra time, then I do meditation in the morning, and I do try and journal, but that doesn't happen all the time. The back end of the day absolutely is getting to bed at a reasonable time. I usually write my gratitudes for the day in my journal, and I just try and do 3 there, and then I read and I go to bed. The other critical things for me are just getting really clear of what I'm trying to achieve that day. So I've become pretty anal, actually, about what my priorities are. So at the beginning of the year, I'm really clear on my goal setting, or my projects that matter. I then make sure that for every 90 days, I'm doing the stuff that contributes to that. I'm keeping attention to those goals, and I really try hard not to deviate. So I've learned the hard way that I need to say no to more, because the more I say yes to stuff, the less it actually helps me gain momentum. Yeah. So it is literally, I think of myself as a little bit of a machine that needs nurturing and fuel. Yeah. And I've actually got to look after myself first and foremost to enable this brain to do its work and to allow me to gift my clients what they need. So I have to look after myself. And if I don't, I'm a bit of a mess, to be honest.
I think that's really important. And one of my other guests was talking about their sort of goals and visions as being their North Star. And even if they're sort of not slightly off course, that they're still sort of driving in that right direction. I think that's exactly what you're talking about. You know, everything is focused in that 90.
Absolutely. It's like I say, set your intention. Again, I talk about this in Be Brilliant. There's a whole chapter around this where I actually set my North Star by a word every year. So I anchor my year to a word. And that word dictates my behaviors, the things I say yes to, the activities that I do. So it almost becomes my way of triaging what I say yes and what I say no to. And the key is set your intention. And then don't beat yourself up if you do go off track. You know, where it falls down, James Clear talks about this a lot in Atomic Habits, Brendan Bouchard in Motivation Manifesto. It's about keeping attention. And if you do fall off a little bit, don't beat yourself up and give up, but go, oh my gosh, right, actually think about what the impact of that. And this is where I know the things that help me perform better, because the times I've fallen off and then I've gone, why do I feel like this? Oh my gosh, it's because I've been to bed too late for a week, or it's because I've been eating rubbish, or it's because I haven't done my exercise. You know, the more that you can start noticing the negatives of not doing your habits, you can then get yourself back up again. And that is the key.
Yeah, and I love that word, you know, set a word for the year, because that's sort of so clear. You know, does this activity or this project, you know, contribute towards my word for the year? So yeah, I love that. That's amazing. So it's sort of along similar veins of sort of being knocked off course. If you could sort of go back and do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I think that's always a really interesting question, Liz, because I almost go, I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing if all of that stuff in the past, it all contributes. And I think that's part of it. Our life to here contributes to where we're at. It contributes to the decisions we've made, the personality that we are, the way that we respond to situations, the stuff that gives us that itchy jacket where we feel uncomfortable. It's all our past that makes us who we are. And part of being brilliant is owning that stuff. Yeah. So I tend to be a forward thinker, and look back with curiosity and go, I wonder how that made me who I am. But saying that, to answer your question, what would I have done differently if I could start all over again? I wish someone had told me right at the start of my career to get that mentor, to get that circle of influence, because I didn't. Particularly at the start of my career, I was very independent. Again, it becomes back to my childhood of being a survivor and just having to do stuff myself. The good of it is it's created this hunger in me of making me that entrepreneur and then that entrepreneur and that person that can get up and do it. The bad thing is that for a very long time, I didn't ask for help. For a very long time, it was like, I've got to look after myself. And I so wish someone had told me in those early days about the importance of mentors, the importance of influencers, as in people that have been there before you, the importance of people to challenge and think. Because I reckon what it does is it speeds everything up. So any of your listeners that are in organizations now or in that entrepreneurial space, is the one bit of advice of go out there, seek out those core people. I'm not talking about hundreds of people on your mailing list. I'm actually talking about a critical group of people. In my book, I talk about 4 and then 12 maximum that are going to help you achieve your dreams. And those are the people that you cultivate your relationships with. Those are the people that you make a point of connecting with. Those are the ones that you are intentional in terms of your relationship, because they will help you break through whatever the challenges are. You can't get there on your own. And so I wish someone had told me that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, we talked about the power of asking for help, not trying to do everything on your own, and not being Superwoman, Superman. And I've personally really benefited from having a mentor, having a coach, just to stretch you and sort of challenge your thinking. I think you mentioned sort of challenging your thinking, reflecting things back at yourself. Because often we can sort of be so inside our own minds, you don't fully recognize how you're seen externally. The positives and also sort of areas that you might want to focus on. So I think, that is absolutely key.
Yeah, you're so right, because we only know what we know, right? And I think this is part of the challenge as we start reimagining our futures post-COVID, is that to move forward as individuals, we've actually got to be prepared to have our own perspectives challenged. I often say, every single one of us has bias. We've all got unconscious bias that has been built over years of how we were brought up, the conversations around the dinner table, the environments in which we were educated. And we've got to be brave enough and courageous enough to have our own biases that we may not be aware of challenged. And this is what we're going to need our leadership to do, and this is what we're going to need to do of ourselves. Because it's only when that awareness comes out that you go, wow, okay, I have jumped to a conclusion there based on all of this noise from my past that I need to now get curious about. So this is why the work that you do, Liz, is so important in terms of helping people achieve their dreams, helping people push back barriers they may not realize that exist, helping people identify blind spots. Because, as I say in the book, you are absolutely brilliant in terms of where you're at right now. You have achieved incredible stuff, but you've got more. There is so much more. And that is the piece of work that we cannot do on our own. We can only get so far on our own, and we can only get so far with people that think like us. So too many of us network with people that are like us. We hang out with the same people all the time, and it limits thinking. So you've got to be brave enough and courageous enough to reach higher, to stretch more, to be prepared, to not have the answers, to know that you're being looked after because someone sees more in you than you see in yourself.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that sort of awareness of areas of blind spots is sort of you're a huge way towards achieving, if you're sort of aware. It's when you're sort of very blinkered and, you know, just not open to that. And I think, you know, having mentors from lots of different sectors, you know, people that are different, you know, maybe if you're a creative person, you might really benefit from a mentor that's quite analytical thinking, and sort of, you know, making use of different personality types and different experiences, I think is really key. So you being a lifelong learner, and I'm sure you've read so many business books and heard so many advice and spoken to so many sort of influencers, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've received on sparking success?
Oh my goodness, because there are so many words of wisdom, many of which are in the book. I think the best piece of advice was someone. Do you know what it was? Let me tell you if we've got time, a really quick story that pretty much sums it up and what I now believe in. So I'm sure there's a wonderful Australian surfer, female surfer, a lady called Layne Beachley. Some of you listeners may know of her. She's an incredible woman. She's about my age, and she is the only female that has achieved 7 times world champion status. And, you know, that in itself, she talks about the fact that at the age of 4, she'd be surfing down at Manly here. And she says, at 4, I knew I wanted to be a world champion. I knew I wanted to be a world champion. And I met her one day, and she said something like, oh, Janine, I just really want to thank you for that work you did about, I can't even remember what it was. And I went as a almost typical north of English person. I went, oh yeah, don't worry about it. It was nothing. I did that. Yeah, whatever. Trying to sort of detract from myself because I didn't want the spotlight. It's all about other people. And she got so angry at me, Liz. She got so angry. She literally said, what right do you have, Janine, to stop sharing who you are? What right do you have to actually not accept my acknowledgement of your work? It's driving me mad. Like, what right do you have to decide who you choose to listen to and who you don't? You've got to believe in yourself, and you've got to start accepting the thanks and acknowledgement of the work that you do. And that literally, and I can still remember the feeling of like getting literally slapped around the head by this 7 times world champion surfer. And for me, it started off with me having to, when someone says, Janine, that's really good, I had to, instead of going, oh, nothing, go, oh, thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. I really practice that. And this is really with that moment feeds into why being brilliant, why you need to be brilliant is so important, because you have a job to do and you believe in something and you have a passion and you have a vision for either the career that you're building, the business that you're creating, the sort of parent you want to be, the sort of friend you want to be. And who told you you couldn't? When did you stop believing that you actually could do all that stuff? And so the piece of advice that Layne gave me was very much around, if you want it, go for it. And you know what? There are people around there that will be attracted to what it is that you're doing and you're saying. And those are the people that matter. Don't worry about the people that hate you or that dislike you. You almost sometimes have to outgrow people. There's a fabulous book by a guy called Stephen Pressfield called Turning Pro. And he talks to this concept that it's a decision that you have to make. Am I going to play this game? Am I going to follow my dreams? Am I going to build the business I want? Am I going to be that entrepreneur, be that leader, be that parent, be that friend? Am I going to live the life I want to live? Or am I going to let other people decide the life I want to live? Because there is nobody else that is responsible for your life and your decisions and your choices and what it is that you do with every single hour and moment and second of your day but you. And so Layne's piece of advice to me literally was a bit of that trigger of self-belief of owning your space, of if you've got something that you're passionate about, then go for it, because your passion is infectious. What you believe absolutely matters. And if you have something you want to do and you want to say, then go for it, because the only thing that is stopping you is yourself, nobody else. And that's really what made me step up, what made me be brave enough to be me, to stop pretending to be something that I'm not, to, in all reality, it's scary writing a book, Liz. It's really scary putting your words, and you've read it. You know how much of me is in that book. We've had a lot of conversations since we've met. There's nothing more scarier than putting your life and your thinking out into the world for people to judge. But you know what makes me do it? It's meeting people like you. It's meeting people on the cheer squad. It's meeting people that believe in what I do and what I write about, and that the emails and the messages that I get back from people going, when you said X, it actually mattered and it made me do Y. That's what keeps me doing what I'm doing. So you have everything you need to be successful. The real challenge is, how brave are you to set off that spark to be the success that you want to be?
Amazing, and very on brand for Spark Succeed, so thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Absolutely fascinating. I'm really charged up to be brilliant for the rest of my day and beyond. So do you want to just mention any final words about the book, about the website that people can go to find out more?
Oh, thanks, Liz. I mean, the book, as you said, is on pre-order. It officially launches on the 1st of July globally. You can purchase the book on any of the online retailers, Amazon, Booktopia, etc., etc. And if you head over to bebrilliantbook.com, there's a whole heap of pre-order bonuses that are available between now and the end of June, including signed copies from me, a mentoring session from me, a live webcast from me. So get in there and take a look. And if you're curious about what else I do, then just check me out on any of the social media channels or janinegarner.com.au, and really happy to chat. And hopefully one day in 2021, I'll have the chance to come and connect in person, come back to England and do some work over there. It'd be great to meet your community. Congrats on everything that you're doing, Liz. It's great work. And it's wonderful to see the impact that you're having over there.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much, Janine. I'm definitely up for, we've said dinner dates in 2021 when we can all travel. Yeah. Amazing. So thanks so much for joining me. I've joined me for the next episode as well, where I'll be joined by Stephen and Donna Fry, also from Australia, who are going to tell us a bit about their 366-day challenge, where they've challenged themselves to meet a new person every day for 366 days. I think they're up to about 220 now. So looking forward to hearing what they've learned from the people they've met. So
you have to connect them in with me. I'd love to be one of the 366.
Yes, definitely. I'll get you linked up, definitely. But thank you so much, Janine. It's been fantastic to have you.
My pleasure, Liz. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Okay, take care. Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
If you'd like to spark your own success, then book in a free consultation at sparksucceed.co.uk.